Welcome, everyone, to our regular weekday morning podcasts on Kabbalah for Heretics, with me, your heretic in chief, Yakov Leib HaKohain. Let's get back to where we left off in our last podcast, which is in the Zohar, of course, for almost 30 years now. Every weekday morning for every 30 years, we have been going through the Zohar systematically, volume by volume, cover to cover, page by page, sentence by sentence. And over that length of time, we have completed volumes 1, 2, and 3, and are well on the way to finishing volume 4. And God willing, when we do finish volume 4, we will enter into volume 5, the last volume of the Zohar. The two rabbis have met this miraculous child who has appeared, of course, in the Zohar several times in one or another guise. In this one, he is the little that has a jar of honey on his back. And we've talked about that at great length. Let me just remind those of you who may be here the first time. According to the Agada, the Messiah will be led from Jerusalem, from a particular point, sitting on an ass, being led by a young boy, the Messiah. In some accounts, it says that it will be an Arab boy. There is no indication that this boy is an Arab, in fact, on the contrary. But still, you see this ancient prophecy of the Messiah being led into Jerusalem on an ass. And here you see a jar of honey being led on the back of an ass. Well, obviously, in this particular instance, the jar of honey is symbolic of the Messiah. And I want to emphasize again why the honey is here mystically related to the Messiah. The Messiah comes to unite Jew and Gentile, to unite the left side with the right side of God, not to start a new religion or indeed to even practice an old one, but by a mystical inner transformation. The Messiah, excuse me, the Messiah makes the forbidden permissible. That's one of the many things he does, at least according to very arcane accounts. Honey, in that context, is extremely interesting as a symbol of the Messiah. Very interesting. I'll tell you why. All insects are forbidden to be eaten in the Torah. They are all unkosher. All insects except one, the locust, but let's put that aside. The bee is absolutely forbidden to be eaten. Absolutely forbidden. But the honey which comes out of the bee is totally permissible to eat. The bee makes the forbidden permissible, just as the Messiah will make the forbidden permissible. And we see with Sabbatai Zevi, that is especially true. So that this is not just a prophecy, perhaps of Jesus, but certainly of Sabbatai Zevi, because Sabbatai Zevi, among his many other mystical actions, took the forbidden fat of the kidney of the lamb, which is forbidden to eat, blessed it and ate it, And he blessed it by creating this blessing. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, who makes the forbidden things permissible. Now listen to that. Sabbatai Zevi makes the forbidden things permissible. This is the 17th century. The jar of honey on the back of this ass comes from a bee that makes the forbidden permissible. This is a prophecy of Sabbatai Zevi. It's a prophecy of the Messiah. But in particular, I believe it's a prophecy of Sabbatai Zevi. Let's get back to where we left off in the Zohar. So they went along holding the boy's hand until they came to a field where they sat down. Until they came to a field where they sat down. These words are never accidental. Oh, excuse me. These words are never accidental. The field is the field in which Cain killed Abel. Field in Kabbalah, you can believe me or not, is a code word for the feminine. So, in relation to Cain and Abel, what it's saying is that Cain was having sex with Abel's wife. Now, I know this is all very unique to all of you, and you've never heard it, but that doesn't mean it's not true and doesn't exist. It does. So here we see, so they went along holding his hand until they came to a field, until they came to that condition at the very beginning, where murder and hatred emerged. They said to him, "Tell us something that your father taught you concerning the work of creation." He thereupon discoursed on the verse, quote, the young boy did, "And God created the great sea monsters." Genesis 1:21. Out of nowhere, in relation to the sitting in the field where there are monstrous things that have happened, he gives a discourse on sea monsters, connecting all of this as one piece. He thereupon discoursed on the verse, "And God created the great sea monsters," plural. He said, the name Elohim is usually applied to the place of judgment, but here it is applied to the most high place from which judgments issue. For although it is intrinsically a place of mercy, yet judgments issue from it and depend upon it. Let's look at something again hidden here in the Zohar. The whole point of studying the Zohar is to reveal the concealed meanings of the Torah. It mentions Elohim. Elohim is the first name of God mentioned in the Torah. In Genesis 1, and throughout Genesis 1, it uses Elohim, and Elohim created this, and Elohim created that. Only with Genesis 2 is the name Yahweh invoked. And then, from then on, pretty much God is referred to Yahweh. Now, there is a curious thing about the word Elohim and the name Elohim. It is plural. A single God, the single nature of God, is referred to only in Genesis 2 after the creation of man. Plural. Elohim, God, divided, broken up from one to many, from, as it were, Elo to Elohim, by the act of creation. The Baal Shem Tov tells us that God fell into duality by the act of creation. He went from a single entity into a plurality. No longer a unity, no longer one. But, as we see in other places, struggling to return to that oneness. The name Elohim, it says, is usually applied to the place of judgment, to the left-hand side, and indeed it is. Elohim is the God of creation. And it furthermore tells us that there was chaos and darkness upon the waters, and the spirit of Elohim hovered above the waters, so that at this stage, the nature of Elohim is chaos and darkness. The God of creation is a God of chaos and darkness. The name Elohim is usually applied to the place of judgment. That's right, darkness, the left-hand side. But here, it is applied to the most high place from which judgments issue. For although it is intrinsically a place of mercy, which is the right-hand side, yet judgments issue from it and depend upon it. In evil there is good, in good there is evil. God is not just loving and merciful. God is evil. It isn't just that God creates evil as well as good. It is that God is evil as well as good. The great sea monsters are the patriarchs, which are watered first and spread their roots throughout all. The patriarchs are sea monsters. This is a very dark description of creation by a very dark God and dark emissaries of God. Yet judgments issue from it and depend upon it. The great sea monsters are the patriarchs, which are watered first and spread their roots throughout all. And every living creature, that is literally every living soul. This is the soul which the supernal earth brought forth from the living creature, the Chaya. The Chaya, the lower creation, which is the highest of all, to wit, the soul of the first man, which formed in its midst. The lowest is indeed the highest, and the highest is the lowest. Elsewhere I say that God makes the permissible impermissible and the impermissible permissible. God makes good out of evil and evil out of good. And I know that some of you are probably getting ready to turn this off because you hear it as being absolutely nothing you've ever heard before, and therefore it must be wrong. But I assure you it's not wrong. I'm not claiming it's absolutely right, but it is the neo-sabbatian Zoharic interpretation of creation, an interpretation which I've spent the last over 40 years of my 82 years bringing to the consciousness and practice of people that moveth. This is the living creature, Chaya, that moves about on all sides, above and below. Let's stop and look at that. Which is the highest of all, to wit, the soul of the first man, which formed in its midst the first man. If you look at Genesis, you will see that there isn't just one creation of mankind, there are two. Male and female are created together, and it says, let us create man. That is to say, at this stage, man was created by the Elohim in collaboration with each other. Man was created by a disjointed God whose spirit was chaos and darkness. And therefore the spirit of this first man was chaos and darkness. And indeed, we see that this first man was first created as a man and a woman connected to each other, but separate. And God took a sword and divided them. The division of the first man was an evil division. It was the first division of God. And we see that in the 10 Sephiros. Keter, the crown, the indivisible God, divides into Chokhmah and Binah. Chokhmah, father, Binah, meaning mother. So the first division in man, with the first creation of man, was the division between the male and the female. Right after that it says, but there was yet no man to till the ground. Listen to me. In this first creation, man and woman were created, connected to each other, and then divided by God. Right after that it says, but there was yet no man to till the ground. And it says, so God created a second Adam out of the dust of the field. The field! Remember? Where these rabbis and the young man are sitting and talking. Created the second man out of the dust of the field. And into that man he breathed a living soul. And that Adam became a living creature. That first Adam did not receive a soul from God. Read it. Don't just take my word for it. Read it. God creates them, God blesses them, but does not, as he does with this second correction of Adam, breathe a living soul into them, and they do not become living beings. Only from the second Adam comes the issuance of living beings. The first followers of Adam, creations of Adam, were unensouled. The first Adam was unensouled, and therefore, and also Eve, and therefore their progeny unensouled. But their God does a correction promptly in Genesis, where it says, but there was yet no man to till the soil. Man at this point being defined as one in whom there was a soul and who was a living creature. Not just an animal, a chayat. It is this second Adam, the ensouled Adam, which gives forth the ensouled man. But it is that first Adam and Eve that brings forth the unensouled man. The entire purpose of the entire Torah is for the second Adam to ritually and theurgically ensoul the first Adam. For the second Adam, the progeny of the second Adam, to correct the mistake of God, which is the first Adam. And every living creature, that is, living soul, this is the soul which the supernal earth brought forth, the second Adam. The second Adam, not the first Adam. The first Adam is not created from the dust of the soil, from the earth. But here it's talking about that second Adam. This is the soul, the living creature, which the supernal earth brought forth from the living creature, the Chaya. Out of the impermissible comes the permissible. Out of evil comes good. Out of anger and hatred comes mercy and love. We'll continue with this tomorrow. Hang on. Let me mark my place. Excuse me. I'll mark my place and we'll continue with this in our next podcast. In the meantime, our two recording technicians are here, and as I do every podcast, I ask them if they have any comments or questions, because those comments and questions they may have might reflect some of the comments and questions that all of you in the listening audience may have. So, David and Yeshai, do you have any comments or questions? Raise your hand, Yeshai. David, excellent. Go right ahead. David, Elohim is plural. God divided up from one into many. The Baal Shem Tov tells us this God went from a unity into a duality, and we see he is struggling to return to that oneness. God does not just create evil and good. God is evil and good. God makes good out of evil and evil out of good. Male and female were created together. There were two first Adams. There were two Adams. I wouldn't say first Adams. There were two Adams. The first man was chaos and darkness. The first division between Chachma, male, and Binah, female. The first creation was dividing male from female. And yet, there was yet no man to till the ground. Elohim created the second man out of the dust of the field and breathed a soul into that second man, which he had not done with the first man. It is that second Adam who ensouls or seeks to ensoul the first Adam. The purpose is to correct the mistake of God. Oh, that's wonderful. That's just wonderful, David. That's wonderful. Thank you, David, very much. Yeshai, go ahead. We're now waiting for Yeshai. All right. Yeshai says, extremely powerful core neo-sabbatian stuff. The honey on the ass's back. The Messiah comes from the side of evil. A prophecy of Sabbatai Zevi. Good from evil. God is evil and good. The entire purpose of the second Adam is to ensoul the first. Beautiful. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you both. I hope that covers some of the questions and concerns of people in the listening audience. Well, now, as we do every podcast at the end, I will recite the Kaddish, the ritual prayer for the dead, in memory of the departed soul of our beloved friend and fellow Kohen Leonard Cohen. Yiskadal v'yiskadash me'ra bo mo divro chirusei v'yamlich machusei v'chayachon of yom echon of chaye d'chol beis Yisrael v'agalo uvizman korev imru amen. Yehei shme'ra bo mevarach le'elam omeil maya Yisparach v'yishtabach v'yispa'ar v'yisasei v'yishadar v'yisalei v'salal Shmei d'kutsho b'richu le'elam minchal b'irachasa v'shigasa tushbechasa v'nechemasa Damiron bomo v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya. V'chayinu aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom bimramov. Hu ya'asei shalom. Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. And let everyone please say Amen. It's Hebrew for Amen. Well, that concludes our podcast for today. And again, you can listen to all the other podcasts whenever you would like on our channel, our internet channel, where they are all recorded and available for you to listen to them. All right, God willing, He'll give me another day of life tomorrow, in which case we will continue on where we left off in this 4th volume of the Zohar. In the meantime, Yivarechecha v'yishmerecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.